Hey everyone, and welcome to Hope Singapore, and welcome to our special program for today called The Cookie Cutter Life. My name is Timothy, and I'm one of the pastors here in Hope Singapore, and I'm going to be your host taking you through today's program, alright? So before we dive right into today's exciting program, I'd love to let you know about our activities and discussions that are happening right after today's program, and we love to get you connected to people your age, studying in your school, or maybe even your faculty, so you can get connected in two ways, alright? Firstly, you could get on the chat box and shout out in capital letters, "I'm new, connect me!" And then someone will be there to connect you. Or you could click on the button that is on the chat box, and one of our online hosts will get to you and connect you to a group that is most appropriate for you. And we love to just talk to you and engage you in discussion about our topic today right after today's program, alright? So today we have a wonderful mix of students and working adults, and I'd love for them to introduce themselves to you, starting with Ray, a freshman from NUS.
Hey, I'm Ray. I'm a first year student at NUS and I'm studying business administration.
Hello, I'm Charlotte. I'm a final year student in NTU Business.
My name is Ling Hui and I'm studying in SUSS Early Child Education.
Hi everyone, my name is Chihan. I graduated from NTU Masscom 10 years ago. Currently, I'm actually a deputy head of events operation in Hope Singapore. So basically, I would help to organize events like conferences and even our weekend worship service in church. So I oversee all these things in Hope Singapore. Yep.
Hello, I'm Kathy. I also graduated 10 years ago from the NTU School of Communications. Right now, I'm the Director of Corporate Comms. So I head the communications team at the Fullerton Hotels and Resorts in Singapore, Hong Kong, as well as in Australia too. So if anyone out there is keen on a staycation, I'll be happy to arrange it for you and your kids and your family with champagne breakfast, with jacuzzi suite, everything that you can imagine. Yes, at the #1 hotel in Singapore.
Hi everyone, so my name is Valerie. I studied communications as well, not at NTU. I'm currently working at Gojek Singapore, doing communications. So I oversee the content strategy and development of Gojek's communication channels within the Singapore market.
That's wonderful. Thank you for introducing yourselves, and we'll get to know them a little bit more as we go along. But right now we're going to play a little game. So I just want to, you don't need your microphones right now, but I want you to just pick up the whiteboard and the marker that you have, and we're going to ask you a few questions, and you have 10 seconds to write down your answer on the whiteboard, alright? So for every correct question, you will get one cookie. And at the end of this game, we're going to find out who is the smartest cookie among them all, alright? So for our audience at home, when we have that question, you can feel free to participate and see if you can do better than some of our panelists today, alright? Are you ready for the first question? 10 seconds to write down your answer. In the solar system, what is the 5th nearest planet from the Sun after Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars? 10 seconds. All right, let's review your answers. Everybody, review. Saturn, Pluto's definitely wrong. Saturn, Neptune, not Earth. And ladies and gentlemen, the first question, we have none of them getting it correct. So I hope some of you in the audience, right, you're getting this correct, because we're losing hope in the panelists over here. The correct answer is Jupiter, all right? Jupiter. It's okay, you have a chance to redeem yourself. It's especially important for them to redeem themselves and their credibility today, all right? So solve this mathematics question. 24 times 57 divided by 12. Let's go. 24 times 57 divided by 12. You only have 10 seconds. Everybody, whatever progress that you have made, just review. Review, everybody. 114, Chihan. Val says she can't do math. Kathy is 150, definitely wrong. Okay, all the current uni students didn't get it correct. We have one correct answer, and that is 114. That's right. I think some of you started to do 24 times 57, but Chihan realized that 24 divided by 12 is just 2. So you just multiply 57 times 2. All right, that's quite brilliant. All right, it's okay. We will move on to our third question. In E equals to mc squared, what does E stand for? Review in 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Question mark, electricity, which is wrong. Energy, Charlotte got it correct. Force, no. Energy, Kathy got it correct as well. So Kathy, I can't believe that people would actually answer E with a word that starts with something other than E. It just baffles me, right? E stands for energy, all right? Okay, it's okay. Question number 4. Now we're gonna go into Chinese. Are you ready? All right. What is the 成语 that translates to when you drink of the water, think of its source? Meaning to say, be grateful for the things that you have and remember where they came from. What is the 成语 that means when you drink of the water, remember its source? All right? Come on. 不要让我们失望，好吗？我不知道。汉语拼音 says 饮水思源 but you don't get points for 汉语拼音。饮 is I suppose that's the most difficult. 饮水思源 yes, 饮水思源 is the correct one. I suppose 饮 is the hardest word. And we have a last question over here. It's a geography question. I'm going to name you 5 countries and you're going to tell me which of them, it can be more than one, alright? Which of these 5 countries are not in Europe? Do not belong in Europe, alright? Ireland, Iceland, Mexico, Hungary, and Argentina. Which of these 5 do not belong in Europe? They're not in Europe. Ireland, Iceland, Mexico, Hungary, and Argentina. All right? Let's review in 3, 2, 1. Everybody, 3, 2, 1. All right. So we have Valerie, Chihan, and Ray getting it correct. Is Mexico? Okay, stop whining. Mexico. And then what happened? No, I said very clearly it could be more than one. That's the end of our game today, and I hope you had fun playing with us at home. Today, our program is titled The Cookie Cutter Life. And today, we're going to explore this topic about cookie cutter. Those of you familiar with baking, you might know that a cookie cutter is something that you use to cut out the shape in the dough to form the cookie or whatever you're baking before you put it in the oven. But this term, cookie cutter, also reveals to something that is mass-produced, and what it signifies or implies is that it lacks originality and it lacks individual traits. It's just mass-produced, mass-market. So with this connotation of cookie cutter, does this exist in Singapore pertaining to our education system? Right? Do we have a cookie cutter system where we produce very mass-produced kind of graduates through our education system? Or is there room for individuality and individual characteristics? So we're going to discuss this topic today, and I'm going to ask this question: is there such a thing as a cookie cutter experience here in Singapore? And if there is, what does this cookie cutter experience look like in Singapore? We're going to throw this question over to Ray.
Okay.
Is there such a cookie cutter experience here in Singapore?
Yeah, I think there is quite an obvious cookie cutter experience that students feel in Singapore, especially when you think about expectation. So I think that, since at a very young age, we already put into streams that sort of define for us what success in that stream looks like, and also defines for us the places that our supposed abilities are supposed to get us to. And I think this whole idea of the whole cookie cutter, this whole cookie cutter shape is amplified even more when we sort of find a need to celebrate people who sort of break out of their own cookie cutter shape. So people that come from maybe different streams but make it to a stream above them. And I think this whole idea of having to celebrate it sort of highlights the fact that we don't actually deem it as normal, or we don't even expect it to happen. And because it's out of the norm, then I think it reveals to us that there is an expectation on these people. And and I think about my own personal experience. So I come from JC. So I guess like the cookie cutter shape for me is to get into a local university here in Singapore, and almost anything out of this expectation will almost be deemed as like failure. Yeah, I would say so. So yeah, I do think that there is a cookie cutter experience here that Singaporeans students face. Yep.
I think to some extent, I'll definitely agree that there's some form of a cookie cutter kind of expectations in Singapore. I think given, there's definitely some form of like societal norms or expectations that, our parents, some of you, or maybe your peers, or even personal pressures that you place on yourself. And I think there's just generally sort of like a formula to success, in terms of your track of how you want to, succeed in life, like getting to good schools and just general progression to settling down with a good family and stuff like that. I think that's something that has been ingrained in a lot of people, and just that fear of not being able to live up to the expectations is very real in Singapore. And I mean, on a personal front as well, that's kind of what I experienced as well. So to some extent, I'll definitely have to agree with this perspective. Yeah.
Right, that's a wonderful answer. So I'd love to hear from you, right? How much do you think a person's family and financial background, right, plays a part in the expectations upon this person growing up, and also the outcome, the end product of how this person turns out?
Okay, I think to a large extent it does play a part, though it's not complete. So what I mean by this is, I do think that the parents' prior experiences with education or in life does set the mold for the child to have to follow in. Or as a parent, I'm not really very credible. Yeah, but if you know something is good, I think you want your child to do that as well. And so I think that the parents' prior experience does affect what the child eventually undergoes, and the expectations put on the child, either very tangibly or very implicitly as well. But and so I do think that the children will go in this direction. But as for outcome, I don't think that like it is totally, it's a direct correlation. Yeah, because I do think that you hear of students who come from family backgrounds where their parents are not too highly educated, but somehow they find their way in the education system, and they find maybe what they like to do. Yep, and they eventually go down that path. So I think as far as expectation goes, it does have a rather large effect. But as far as outcome goes, it's not such a direct correlation. And I think people find their own way in life as well. And parents perhaps only play the first couple of steps along the way. Yep.
Yeah, so I think it's a tough question. I think but I think the things that now currently we're talking about this education system and stuff, I think when it comes to income level and social status, I think there's this word called upward mobility. I think in Singapore, especially nowadays, people are talking about this, and especially to the less privileged have the equal opportunities for their kids to actually move out. I wouldn't use the word poverty because honestly speaking, in general, if you look at the macro perspective, the issue of poverty is more prominent in other countries. In other countries, like in the US, those who want to move upwards, I think they not just look at the education, they do sports. That's why you look at the NBA, you look at the NFL. These are the areas that they go through. But we ask ourselves this question: does it look like a cookie cutter life for them? I would say yes, actually, because there's a certain stereotype of who go through to become an athlete, who go through to become an NBA star, and they want to break out that the poverty that the parents that went through. And their parents want them to break them out also. But in terms of our aspect, I find that it's a very tough question, because I think as much as we systemize and we standardize certain things, is definitely, as a parent myself, I have two kids, one 5 and the other one is just 1. I'm really thinking of also how to help them. But the ability of myself helping them will be very much different from someone who is less privileged. So even as in terms of looking at it from a cookie cutter perspective, they might be able to be so fortunate to go through the cookie cutter, but actually other families might not have that opportunity, and they actually maybe go through a very more transient lifestyle, more unpredictable growing up years. But does that really mean that it's not good for them? Like what you said, like Ray said, like we don't know the outcome, because ultimately at the end of the day, you still have your next 40 to 60 years to live on. So yeah.
Well, actually, if we are in the middle and upper income range of background, to be honest, we are in an extremely privileged position, because you imagine you are not having to think about taking up part-time work to supplement your family income. You're not dealing with relational crisis that is happening at home, whether it's parents' divorce, really extreme relation problems that some people go through, or the people in the poverty range go through. So what does that mean for you as a student is that you can really prioritize and focus your energy on studying, growth, as well as development, comparatively to someone who is dealing with having to have a lot of insecurity in life, financially, relationally, lots of turmoil at home. It's a very different position. So that is one point. And the second thing is that if you are upper and middle income too, naturally your parents are of that profession. And guess who they bring you to meet for dinner? You're probably meeting professionals, doctors, entrepreneurs, businessmen, lawyers. And when you have that kind of influence when you're growing up, guess what you feel like becoming when you grow up? You probably want to have a profession that is able to save lives, able to contribute to society. You have bigger dreams. You're like, wow, I want to be in a startup business in future because I see this uncle doing it and it's so cool. Yeah, and that is how you are brought up to know that the world is full of possibilities because you're in a very privileged position. So I would say financial background makes a real difference. Yeah.
I do think that financial background really matters. I think in a sense, I think that financial background it actually gives access to certain stuff that we have. So for example, taking that if you come from a more privileged background, right, perhaps since young, right, if you don't if for example you struggle with certain subjects, right, you can go for tuition. But someone from that struggles to make ends meet, right, they may not be able to. And I think personally, for my own experience, after I graduate from my tertiary education, I decided to go out to work for 2 years to actually gain to actually earn some money for my university fees. So I guess in that sense, I think Singapore, as much as we are a country that believes in meritocracy and all, but I do still think that the access, there is the difference between the access of resource that we are able to get.
So the next question I have for you is, how much or how little does your own experience as a student growing up in Singapore resemble a cookie cutter life? Your own experience.
Yeah, so I think that for myself on the surface, my educational path looks quite cookie cutter lah. So I came from primary school, average secondary school, average JC, and then got into a local university in the end. But I think when you take my whole life into account, my life doesn't really look that much like a cookie cutter life because I come from a lower middle income family, single parent family as well. And I'm the first person in my family, as well as extended family, to get into a local university in Singapore. So as far as the expectation to do well in my family, that was not really existent because no one really forces that upon me. So I guess expectation in this cookie cutter setting that we're in came from myself, a desire to not want to do better. I think upward social mobility in that sense also. Then when it came to financials, it's also the very practical reason that getting into a local university would guarantee that there will be other means of payment like CPF and perhaps access to bursaries. Yeah. So I think when you take my whole life into account, my life doesn't really resemble that of a cookie cutter path lah. Yeah, that's me.
When I finished A-levels, I think the only natural process is to go to uni. Otherwise, the A-level cert is kind of I would say useless because I guess you're not as good as a poly graduate because they at least have the skill set of a niche, something that they studied for lah. And yeah, I guess my life has always been a just nice made it kind. Like my PSLE was like just nice can make it to express class. My O-level score just nice can make it to like MI, which is called Millennium Institute. So there, like where I studied like business, and my A-level scores were also like given by grace, I guess, that like I was able to make it to a uni, and NTU was the only choice that was given to me lah, and I gladly take it. Of course, it's a local NTU, right? It's a local uni, so I'll gladly take it. Yeah, and as much as my life, I don't think I'm a cookie cutter more. I'm just like a parchment paper, I guess. Like I just made it to the oven. Yeah, like somehow or other I made it to the oven, kind of thing.
Tompang.
Correct.
So I'm gonna throw this question over to Kathy because it seems to us like you are the perfect cookie. Like you went to good secondary school, JC, went to a local university, graduated with a degree. Now you're a director at Fullerton, married a doctor. So tell us, how was it, growing up for you to make you the perfect cookie that you are today?
Well, I think people look at me and think that I'm the perfect cookie. Or when I was younger, actually, my friend described me as a ham jing ping. I mean, everything is full, unlike a donut, which has a hole in the center. Because it appears as if I tick off the checkbox for every single thing, right? But I would say, actually, to be honest, my circumstances are very, very similar to many of you here, and even to people who are watching this at this point in time. I grew up in a family which was middle income. My parents also didn't have the chance to go to poly or university, so they stopped at O levels. And I would say when I was growing up, I was very, very clear that my parents wanted me to get a university degree, to the point that when I was getting married and the videographer was asking my parents, what do you want to say to Kathy to be shot on the screen, right? They were like, 我真的很高兴我的女儿可以进那个大学 And I'm like, I'm getting married, mom, dad. It's bigger than uni. Like, who cares about uni now, right? Yeah. So you can imagine their preoccupation with, oh, you better get a good education. It's going to set you up for life, right? So I think that was the background that I grew up in. So when I was younger, I didn't really have tuition or anything like that, but I was, by the grace of God, I managed to get into an independent secondary school with decent grades and all. So, and although I performed pretty well, I think my parents had always had the perception that this is what is required of you. It's there's no such things as praises. There's no such things as, oh, let me bring you on a trip to, reward you. Nothing like that. So it's a given that I have to tick off these check boxes. So I think that was the environment I grew up in, which made me feel that, that was a trajectory that I had to walk through. Yeah. So when I was growing up too, I was often worried about bringing my friends to my house, including my friend here, Chihan, because we were university classmates. And every time I brought my friends home, my mom had a lot of comments about me, because I think, people think like I'm the perfect cookie, right? Like, oh, they think like my family is great, I have everything I have in life. But when my friends come to my house, that's when my mom would start telling them tales about me, about how I was super lazy, I was super rude, I was not good in anything. And that was, of course, a very different perception that people have of me at home versus outside, right? Yeah.
She's like Asian parents kind of thing. I still remember, like, because we were uni classmates, so there was once like a bunch of us, I think it was like Chinese New Year or what, we went to 拜年, then like we were all sitting down, then suddenly the mom say, 你们不要看 Katy 这样子，她不是你们想象中的这样完美的. So it's like in front of us, then we were like eating the crackers halfway. I was like, okay, auntie. Yeah, auntie.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think then we got a like very funny. Inside us, we want to laugh actually, but she's like super serious and super fierce on it, and that's like, then after that, Katy was trying to tell us that like it's always like this at home, and it's like she has a very different kind of expectation for her. Yeah.
And to be honest, I couldn't understand why when I was young, because I would think like, I got decent grades, I'm a decent kid, I never got into problems with disciplinarian, master or anything like that. And you would think my mom should be happy, right? But no, like, I mean, to be honest, even now, my mom is like, Kathy, do you want to think about taking up master's degree? I think if not, your job will be redundant soon. You know, that kind of thing. So I'll be like, yeah. So she probably had much lesser in life. That's why she expected me to try to achieve more so that I will not be disadvantaged in that way. So that's why she heaped a lot of expectations upon me to do better. And I mean, in that sense, nothing was ever good enough for her. No matter whether I was, I don't know, able to speak well, able to present well, able to excel in school, able to have friends in school. Like, it was a very, very smooth sailing student life, but it was not too good enough for my mom in that way. Yeah.
How about Chihan? How was your background growing up?
For me, actually, like I wasn't born in Singapore. I was born in Malaysia. My mom is Singaporean, so I'm half like that. So later on, then I become a citizen. So I came into the cookie factory later into the life, because for the first maybe 9 years in my life, I was chasing chickens in the kampong in Malaysia. So I wasn't really studying. All I know is my Chinese is very powerful, because we speak Chinese in Malaysia and stuff like that. So I actually came to Singapore when I was primary 3. So welcome to the factory. And I didn't know a bit of English, so therefore I took the entry test, right? Everything full marks except English. So I passed it, I never failed also. I remember, because I you know, pattern can, okay, this one means this one means this. So I memorize, I do a lot of assessments. So I just scraped through the English test, got in, but I have to down one grade. That means instead of P3, I study P2. So it just went through for my entire education year. There's only one goal: just do the best I can, score the best grade I can in my studies and all. But certain things change. Certain things change along the way, because I think one of the experience actually caused me to actually think of this as a very young age is that after the PSLE year, I scored quite well, honestly, but then I didn't really get into the school that I wanted. It's an independent school. I basically cannot afford it, because I also from a middle and low income family. I just差一分, it's really just that 1 mark, right, that I can't get that scholarship. So therefore, I still remember I chose the school on the day itself. They wanted me, but we went down to the school, and they just say really cannot get a scholarship. So you want to get in, then every month have to pay this sum. So from then after that, I realized that wow, actually working hard is actually not enough. I have to work even harder. So never mind. Then I go to I literally remember that I went to the other second choice school, which is not bad also lah. So at the end, after that, I just proceed on with my life. And in the end, eventually get into JC and get into local U.
Thanks, Chan, for sharing. Over to Valerie, right? Valerie, how about you? What was your background growing up?
So for me, I generally did well in school. My family, they never really placed pressure on me to do well, but it was more of a peer pressure, that because the friends around you are all doing very well, right? So naturally, I felt that I also ought to step up my game and compete with them as well. So it was also a personal pressure that I placed on myself to have to constantly live up to the expectations of the people around me, minus my family, and so. I managed to get to Hwa Chong through the integrated program. But for IP, right? And the funny thing is that actually I because I was in IP, right, I was sort of stuck to this journey in a sense, this 6-year journey where I go automatically to Hwa Chong, right? And the funny thing is what Chan mentioned, I actually wanted to go to poly. I wanted to go to Nia Poly actually to study comms, because that was what I wanted to do. But because I think my family flipped out, when they realized that hey, you really have this path to go to this JC, why you want to go to poly, that kind of thing. So I stuck to sort of that path that was already set up for me. So I went to Hwa Chong, and then so for IP, right, you basically a direct track to A levels, right? You don't have to take the O levels. So really, I really just had to do well in A levels, because if not, my only fallback would be PSLE, and so it was quite a stressful period of time for me. And back then, I even doing, when I was studying for the exams, right, I was even joking with my friends. They're like, hey, what if the only A that I see in my results is the A in A levels, no? And then to my horror, this actually came to pass, and it was a very devastating moment for me, because I studied really hard, but yet at the same time, I did not see the fruit of my labor, and that was, it was just a very terrible period of my life for me. Yeah.
Can I ask, like, how does that actually like makes you feel?
I think back then I felt really very lost in terms of, what to do next. It really felt like the end of my life, like when everyone around me did well and I think I did one of the worst in school, to be honest. And I just felt like I didn't know what to do next in terms of what to pursue. Like I just felt like my whole career path was ruined in that sense. And I wanted to, go to a local uni so badly, right? That I even appealed to go to NTU like 6 times, And I was just desperate to just make it and to not have to choose the alternative path, And so it got to a point where the dean even actually had to call me to like, hey, maybe you should, stop applying and consider pursuing other alternatives. And I think it was then that I realized that, I didn't really have a choice. Like, I was thinking, okay, maybe I can go overseas. But my mom wasn't really very supportive of that idea. So eventually, I was kind of left with no choice. And then I went to SIM instead to study comms. So when I first started out my journey in SIM, right, I think since day one, I was really subject to scrutiny, right? Because I was like from Hwa Chong and all. And generally, people have that stereotypical impression that, if you're from a certain school, you'll be at that level of, you'll be more academically inclined. So I felt the pressure since day one to really have to perform and live up to that expectation and that label of me as like the Hwa Chong kid, And then I still remember my friends gave me this nickname, Prof Go, and took whatever answer that I said as the model answer because, Prof Go is always right. And I think that having to live up to that pressure as well was quite overwhelming, And I remember also doing my very first group project, I felt that pressure to have to carry the team, to put in that bit more effort, even especially when, the team members around me aren't putting as much effort. I felt that I had to, really pull the team to get to a good grade, that kind of a feeling. And even when we were, for example, checking our results or our grades, right, I still remember having to like go to like a toilet cubicle and then like, check my grades in private, because I was just afraid that my classmates will tease me, for doing well and stuff like that. So it was difficult to shake off this label even in SIM. And I think it was something that I had to really learn to deal with over time. Yeah.
Gee, can I ask, like, how do you go through all of that? There must be a lot to take.
Yeah, so I think what really helped was back then I had a church mentor. Her name is Ling, and she also had her own journey. She was a VJC, and then she went to SIM as well. So I felt that she could really relate to me in terms of experiences and could really encourage me as well. And I think it really helped that I had also a community of like church friends who really encouraged me. They did not see me as like the HC kid and all, but they really related to me in a without any expectations and really encouraged me as well. So that really helped me to get through. Yeah.
And so you were a Christian already when all these things happened?
Yes, I was already a Christian. I came to know God when I was in Sec 4. But I only came to take my faith a bit more seriously when I was in J1. Yeah.
And so you're already a Christian when all these things happened, right? Then you became a Christian and then you got like this A-level setback, right? And how did that make you feel about God? Do you feel like God let you down?
I definitely felt that God let me down in some way. I was very disappointed in God, to be honest. I felt that, I studied really hard and then I never really slacked off in church in that sense. Like I continued to go to service, I continued to serve, and I felt that, as I continued to be like a good Christian, right, like God would bless me in return. I would receive like good results because of I've been checking every box in terms of being a good student, in terms of being like a good Christian, that kind of thing. But I felt it was really unfair. That's why, when I received my results, and it wasn't what I expected at all. Like, I think I didn't expect to, I expected to at least get to a local uni. I think that was like the baseline expectation. So to have that baseline expectation not even met, right? It was really quite disappointing, especially when I saw how, the friends around me who sort of slacked off in church who happened to do better. That I think it was then that I really felt that, like, it was as if God didn't really care about my efforts. Yeah, so that really affected me quite a bit.
Since like you mentioned that like God has put you through all this, like they make you stop going to church.
Actually, surprisingly, no. I continued going. I think it probably crossed my mind to maybe stop going, but I think the community around me continued to support me and encourage me in this journey, to not feel, discouraged in that sense. So I think because of that support, I continued to, persevere on in my faith and to continue going to church, yeah.
Actually, just curious. So, how do you actually do in SIM eventually?
So I studied really hard, right? And then I made sure I put in a lot of effort for all my assignments and whatnot. And eventually I graduated with the highest distinction. And I think that really opened doors to, careers in so that my first career was in the public sector as well. And I think back then, I think a highlight for me in my career was really to be involved in, back then there was the SEA Games, right? And then the ASEAN Para Games that was held in Singapore. I think that was really a highlight of my career where I had the opportunity to really support the event and all. And then from there, transited to a private sector now where I'm in Gojek. And, being able to see how my work really impacts the day-to-day lives of our drivers and our families. And I think that really creates a lot of meaning for me, lah. Yeah.
Wow, okay. Then, but like looking back, right, what are some like of the very important lessons that you learned through like this journey?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is really to recognize that one setback in life really does not define my career path or whatever path that I thought I was supposed to take. At the end of the day, I recognize that regardless of whatever path that I've chosen, I recognize that God is still in control, and that even though I might be disappointed with God back then and all, and it might potentially actually take quite some time. For me, it took actually about like a good 5 years before I actually came to terms with to reconcile with this disappointment that I had with God, and over this journey, right, like even till I graduated and I got a good career and all, like it was only when I managed to sort of secure a good job. It was then that I started to see a bit more of God's plan in my life and how what I thought I wanted to walk in terms of the career path that I wanted to do. It might not be what I expected, but God still had a plan for me, and no matter how bad the situation may seem, He's still in control, and He can always turn things around. Yeah, and I think that was really very encouraging for me.
Thank you, Val. Thank you for sharing such precious lessons about the journey that you've gone through. I'd like to switch gears a bit to talk to Chi Han right now. Share with us more about your university education and your journey through university. How was it like for you in university?
So I was mentioning that before that I was like wanting to go to mass comm earlier, but then because my parents would like prefer me to go to JC, that's why I took the JC path. Then after that JC, first thing I applied to is to NTU Mass Comm. So I got in pretty easy, so don't have to appeal. But for me then I wasn't really a Christian, a believer. So I think throughout my life, I think I have setbacks, but I overcome all these setbacks just purely through my own will, the human will. I think human will can be strong at times, but I think at some points like there are things that are happening in, even though I'm in a like so-called like quite good local U, and also doing the things that I really want, but there are still disappointments, there are still pressure, there's still stress that's coming in. So I remember like that was the time around when I was like end of year 2 and starting of year 3. I was like actually going into industrial attachment, which is my internship. So I was doing films productions, and I went into a local production house. Actually, absolutely everything I do there, I enjoy, and it's like the people there are good to me. I'm good with them also. I'm still in contact with them, good friends with them. But just that the whole idea of like just working in and out every day, even though it's not office work, but there's still some sort of a routine that's ongoing. I have to work late, and not saying that I mind working late, but this constant working, like 3-4 a.m., sometimes overnight, it takes a toll on my mental health. It takes a toll in me lah. So there was a point of time where I felt really, really lost. That was around I remember it's during the March or April period of 2009. So then what got me really thinking about life then, and it get really emo. Then was really when my grandpa passed away. I wasn't even close with him, and he's like back in Malaysia. Then I went to the funeral, and I remember during the funeral I was thinking like, hey, what am I doing in my life? Like it has to be a funeral. Then I take a break from all the things. I'm not even starting working yet. I'm just like a student trying to, get a hang of what working life is like. So I'm like I still remember like I'm like lost in the big sea. It's like, is this really what I want in life? And like this is what I love to do, but how come I'm not contented? How come I'm not happy? So a lot of thoughts came into my mind. So then suddenly during that period of time, the group of friends were like try to bring me to church. So like Kathy and the rest of the friends, that were saying, hey, there's this like short film, in the church during the Easter period. Why don't we just come and see? Just
Short films and pretty girls in the church. Hope Church.
No, the part now you added the part. There isn't this part. Nah. I came, it was like all guys actually. Like I still remember who. Kathy invited me to the church, and then I knew that she has this like complicated background.
Kathy, what's your complicated church background?
Oh, well, I came to know God when I was in secondary school. So I was in Hope Church too. But along the way, I actually left church somewhere when I was in JC because church had so many meetings. Like public holiday need to meet, weekends need to meet, weekdays need to meet. And then at the time, I was so young and I was thinking, I really rather be doing something else than to meet my church leaders and church friends again. Yeah, so that was what I had in mind. So a lot of it is about priorities. I think time management, I wasn't doing so well in it. So I felt, I really cannot do this church thing anymore. Yeah. So after all that thought about the pressures of having to attend a lot of service, meeting, life groups, I decided to leave, and then I had my own life outside. But it was only much later when I was in university around year 3 that, in uni actually is a wonderful place. So I admire and envy all of you because uni is such a fun place to learn, to grow, to have new experiences. So I remember at that time I was, in broadcast too, doing presenting. I was doing film festival. I was learning so many new fun things. Even now, I'm sure you have entrepreneurship classes. You can be passionate about, sustainability, saving the earth, pets, all kinds of things that uni students should be fired up about, supposedly, right? But at a point in time, I was doing all of that. Yet at the same time, it was like a search in the meaning of what was at the end point of all of that. And of course, at a point in time, I was also going through a heartbreak. So what happened was, why are you laughing? Are you like gloating at me? Okay, so what happened was, I think I was at a lower point in my life, and then I had no church friends around me at all. So one of the days, I started praying to God. I said, God, if you will, please send me some Christian community around me. And surprisingly, the next semester, when school restarted, I suddenly had like a lot of Christian girlfriends around, and they were the ones who started telling me, hey, why don't you visit this church, that church? So I think I visited more than 5 or 6 churches at that point in time. And that was when I think, it was also the era of where Facebook started too. As a uni student, and even now, I'm sure you scroll through Facebook and Instagram every day and you're like, wow, this person is going traveling. Wow, this person is involved in this campaign. It's so cool. And you're like, I want to do this. I want to do that. But at the end of the day, you're like, do you really want to be taking part in all of that? And what is the end point in the pursuit of all these campaigns, or being an activist, being super passionate about pets or planet or whatever it is? What is the end point of all of that? And that was the exact thing that I was thinking about when I was a kid in uni as well. So I decided I really need meaning in life. And also I knew that if I want to go back to God, it cannot be two ways, like, oh, go back, then leave, go back and leave. So I made a very, very clear decision that if I want to come back, it is for real and it's for life. And there was one day I was sitting at home on a Saturday thinking about which church should I go for that weekend. And what happened was a sister from Hope texted me. And the sister said, hey, we're at church camp now. And Pastor Jeff said, please go and text people who have left church and tell them that Hope doors are always open for you. Imagine this is kind of like a Rhema word, right? You're like, where should I go to church this weekend? And then And then this happened. So I decided, even though I was very, very, very embarrassed about going back to Hope because I left, and I felt I disappointed a lot of people in Hope who had expectations on me to be a good mentor, to be a good leader. I decided, okay, I'm just going to try to quietly come back to Hope, and hopefully nobody recognizes me and nobody knows me, and I would sit at the back of the service. So that was how I came back to Hope. And I also remember very, very distinctly the second time I came back to Hope, when I was already in university, still feeling that fear of being recognized or being called out that, hey, weren't you the Kathy that left church? What happened was I came back to church and I was on the last row because I was a bit late. And at that time, church wasn't like the way it is so filled, right? So the last few rows were empty. And when I was sneaking in quietly, Pastor Jeff was actually at the last row. He was about to come to preach in front of the sermon. So it was during worship. He was just praying there at the last row. And then he saw me and I saw him. And then he was like, Kathy, you are back. And then it's like prodigal son, you know, he ran towards me, put his arms around my shoulder and said, I'm so glad to see you, Kathy. I felt like crumbling at that point in time. I was like, okay, I was very, very, very touched. And I know that this is home for me. This is really home for me. And I decided, I want to be back home with Hope in that way. So I'm very thankful for the community in Hope too, who accepted me for coming back, and they understood my story, and there was no such thing as, oh, you know, you were a sinner, you were doing this, da 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 da. Yeah, it was a smooth transition, and I'm thankful for the community. Yeah.
Wow, that's really helpful, and that's very, very real. I think what you're sharing, those who have left church can really, really relate. So at that point of time, in your year 3, right, Jihan said that you invited him. What made you want to invite your classmate to church?
I invited Jihan because Jihan is actually very legendary in our course as well. He was this guy that was very, very brilliant in script writing and filming and photography. And I knew that at a point in time it was quite funny because we always had modules to work on, right? And if you choose the right classmate, you will get A without having to do much work. So that was what I did. I was like, Jihan, let's be in the same group.
Because I also need like a Hua Ping inside my film. So then I don't need to cast other people. So I just like silently, okay lah, come. Then after that, every time there's a like a film going on, right? Then she'll appear lah. So then no need to like call other people, like can or not. She must be in because she need a group grade also.
Yeah, so on my film and broadcast, I always get A even though I didn't do anything much. And so I knew he was a very brilliant guy, but also very emotional, very complex, always thinking about very deep thoughts. And that was when I feel like, he's searching for meaning and answer as well, and decided he needs to meet God. He needs to meet Jesus and understand the purpose of why we do what we do too.
So basically, after I came, not just like I deal with the internship journey differently, but I think when I was in my year 4, I went through the FYP period where I need to make a short film. So then I think the whole journey was quite amazing. Then I think like I deal with the entire thing very differently compared to last time lah. I think so what happened was like during my short film, we are the only short film that didn't get the official grant from the Singapore Film Commission. So every group will apply a grant so that you got money to actually rent your equipment, like pay for your part-time actors and all that. So I cannot always rely on her because like there are some roles that she can't fit in. Like, I need a grandmother, I cannot ask her to act as grandmother. So things like that, it causes money, and then like for students like us, we need that money. So we are the only group that didn't get the grant. I still remember my producer during the last day of my shoot, she was doing this. 我给你看那个东西啊，你不要喊 okay? I was like, what? Then she showed me the rejection letter. I was like, oh, we still got one more shoot going on. So, we didn't mind. But then I was like, actually very strange. I was quite very peaceful. I was like, never mind, it's okay. We just finish first and see. So after that, we go through it. Then after that, we sit down together. Then we were discussing, four of us were discussing how we're going to deal with this amount. We were disappointed, but I think the positive take to that is like, I know that this will be under control. And that is the difference that I'm dealing with it that moment. So we took up freelance job, part-time job, do a lot of part-time job. I teach students, do maths and all these things, do videos for other people, editing for other people. So we finally, before our graduation, we are able to actually paid everything off ourselves. So just so nice that our films were accepted into a few festivals and awards lah. We were like contesting in a few awards. Also one of it was actually the Crowbar Awards, which we initially didn't want to join because Crowbar was actually not for film. Actually is actually for advertising. The whole award, there's photography, there's like advertising and film included. So traditionally film not supposed to win one. In the end, then they called our name. So we were like the best of show for that year. So we like did a sweep that year. And why it's so amazing is that at the end of the thing, right, then we were so excited. Then after that, we go back. Then tally. Hey, wow, the amount of the prize money that added up to, right, to our surprise, is like almost exact, right, the amount that actually that we can pay back our parents. The amount that we actually also earn during this internship period, and it's like I just felt that like throughout this period I able to go through it like with such peace that I haven't felt before, and I felt that this is really like God is like in control of this, and it's like assuring me of this thing that I do. So then I didn't really go into it with like this expectation, but at the end of it, I just like felt very covered and protected by God. Yeah.
Actually, Chiang, can I ask if like all these awards change you in any way?
I come to learn that there's a time spent for every award that you achieve. I came to realize that it's short term. Then I also question myself, like if I were to keep it up, right, that means I need to always make the film that wins awards year after year and year after year. So like I was wondering, like, do I want to chase after this? There are other aspects to life as well.
That's really awesome. Please help me thank our panel for joining us today and having such a robust discussion. You can thank them by typing your comments in the chat box wherever you're watching this from. Please help me just show your appreciation for our panel today. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you, panel, for sharing your stories. So with such openness and vulnerability, and I believe some of you watching this, you can relate to some of the stories that are being shared. Right now, if you don't mind, I'd like to share with you my cookie cutter life story. I didn't expect it in my wildest imaginations that one day I would become a pastor. I grew up in a family of free thinkers. My dad and mom were both graduates from university, and it's not very common for their generation. Both of them graduated from accountancy and ended up forging very successful careers in the finance industry. And myself, being the oldest of 3 sons and doing the best in school among my brothers, I did well in my studies. So I went to good schools like Raffles Institution and Victoria Junior College. And I got a place in NTU to study accountancy. So it was as if I was following in my parents' footsteps. I also did well in my CCAs. I was a venture chairman of my scout group in secondary school. I represented my JC in A Division tennis. And in my NS days, I was an officer in the Navy. So I was well on my way to go into NTU, study, get my degree, and then graduate and probably enter the finance industry and do well in the marketplace. That was supposed to be my cookie cutter life story. And at the age of 20, I was open to the idea of religion. I didn't mind talking to people, reading up a little bit, exploring a little bit more, because I really thought to myself that I have nothing to lose, and I didn't mind. I didn't plan on being very devout or committed or anything. Just hear, listen, and if I was ever to take a decision, if there was any decision to be made, I would do it on my terms. But if not, then there's no decision to be made. I will just move on. So it was at that time when I was in NS at the age of 20 that I accepted my friend's invitation to go to his church. I really didn't mind. I didn't plan on making any special commitment on that day. And when I went to that church, there was really no special program, nothing particularly engaging, just the usual singing and welcoming of each other. And when the pastor spoke, it wasn't as if he was a very charismatic speaker or very engaging. He was just like, maybe if I can describe it, like a very enthusiastic university lecturer. It wasn't particularly very striking or very moving. But as he spoke and shared his message, I began to see my life unfold as he shared his message. Some of the things that he shared, I struggled with. And these struggles, nobody really knew. Not even my parents, my family members, or even my close friends. And there was so much truth in the content of his message. And towards the end of that message, he said this line that seemingly had nothing to do with the content of the message. But he said, don't look for God for who you want to find. Look for God for who He is. And I remember that some 17 years ago, almost word for word, because sitting there as a non-Christian listening to this message, it just made so much sense to me. I was looking for a God or a religion or a church that suited my preference. One that maybe, I like the culture and not too pushy, not always asking me to go for Bible study and church activities. And the girls are pretty and I just like this environment and I like the pastor and leaders. I was looking for one that suited my preference. But that line made me think that if I was really in need and I really needed to call on a God for help in my life, that this God must be greater than me. He cannot be a God that I chose for myself based on my own preference. So that made a lot of sense to me. And I decided at that time to open up my heart, give Jesus a try, and allow Him to lead my life. Now you must understand, at that point of time, I cannot claim to know everything about God or the Bible or church or Christianity. And even now, today, that I'm a pastor and I'm doing my master's in theology, I still cannot claim to know everything about God or the Bible or church or Christianity. I'm learning new things constantly. And it's an entire journey. It is a journey of a personal relationship with God. You see, my friend, Christianity is really not about religion, about do's and don'ts, about things that we need to attend. It is really all about a personal relationship with God. So when I was in NS, I decided to give Jesus a try, open up my heart, and allow Jesus to lead my life. And since then, I've experienced so many countless supernatural miracles. Man, if one of these events happened, you could chalk it off as, oh, this is just a coincidence. But because so many different events like this happen in the way that they happen, some people say that it takes more faith to disbelieve that there is a God behind it all and believe that it's all just mere coincidence, because it takes tremendous faith to believe that all these things can really be just a coincidence. And over the years as a Christian, I've discovered truth in the Bible that I could not find anywhere else. These words that were written thousands of years ago in a completely different civilization, a different cultural context, and a different language. Yet, it holds so much truth for us today, not just from a macro perspective or a religious perspective, but so much relevance in our personal life. The Bible is God's word to us. And over the years, I've experienced God and His presence, His tangible presence in such a real way. And if you ask me how does that feel or how does that look like, it's going to be difficult for me to be able to find the right words to articulate that experience and do it justice. You have to experience it for yourself to know what I'm talking about. So over these years, I have experienced for myself that Christianity is really not a religion, but it's all about a personal relationship with God. I know that there is a God who loves me and He is in control of my life. Therefore, I can gladly allow Him to lead my life. Today we have a song that we love to present to you. And it talks about how even though many things in life are out of our control, they are still within the control of a God who loves us and has a plan for our life. And I hope you enjoy this song.
Here I am, all my intentions, all my obsessions, I wanna lay them all down in your hands. Only your love is vital, though I'm not entitled, still you call me your child. God, you don't need me, somehow you want me. Oh, how you love me, somehow that frees me to take my hands off of my life and the way it should go. Oh, God, you don't need me, somehow you want me. Oh, how you love me, somehow that frees me to open my hands up and give you control. I give you control. I've had plans shattered and broken, things I have hoped in fall through my hands. You have plans to redeem and restore me. You're behind and before me. Oh, help me believe. God, you don't need me, somehow you want me. Oh, how you love me, somehow that frees me to take my hands off of my life and the way it should go. Oh, God, you don't need me, somehow you want me. Oh, how you love me, somehow that frees me to open my hands up and give you control. Oh, you want me, somehow you want me. King of heaven wants me. So this world has lost its grip on me. You want me, somehow you want me. King of heaven wants me. So this world has lost its grip on me. God, you don't need me, somehow you want me. Oh, how you love me, somehow that frees me to take my hands off of my life and the way it should go. Oh, God, you don't need me, somehow you want me. Oh, how you love me, somehow that frees me to open my hands up and give you control. I give you control. I give you control. I give you control. Yes, Lord, we give you control. We give you control. I surrender control.
Indeed, the King of Heaven loves you and wants to have a personal relationship with you. this is a God who is not just mighty and powerful and in control, but He is a God who is near and who is personal and who loves you. And right now, if you're watching this, I want to invite you to take the next step, just one small step, to knowing this God more. And you might be wondering, what does that next step look like? Well, my friend, there is no such thing as a cookie cutter Christian life, because all of us, all of our faith journeys are different, and we have our own unique story with God. And perhaps this is one of the first few times that you've ever been exposed to Christianity. Maybe you never heard of it before. Maybe you've been brought up in a family of another religion and you're really not very familiar with Christianity. Well, your next step is not necessarily to convert or become very devout, because you may not be ready for that. And I promise you, we will not pressure you to do anything that you're not ready for at this point. But maybe your next step can simply be to open up your heart, have a conversation with someone, be willing to find out more, read up a bit more, and when the time is right, if there is any decision to be made, that you can make that decision when you feel ready. And perhaps some of you watching this, you're already familiar with some aspects of Christianity. You might have been exposed before. Maybe your parents, one or both of them, are Christians and they brought you to church before. Maybe you studied in a missionary school where you have attended Bible study or chapel and you have had some exposure to Christianity. Or maybe you're seeing a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a good friend who is a Christian, and you kind of had an idea of what a Christian life looks like. And if this is you, I want to invite you to take the next step, to receive Jesus into your life personally. That it's not just someone else's experience, but it will be yours as well. That the King of Heaven, He loves you and wants to have a personal relationship with you, and He loves you so much that He sent His one and only Son, Jesus, to die on the cross for your sins. And 3 days later, this Son of God, Jesus, He rose again from the dead, and because He has new life, if we believe in Him, we can have new life as well. I want to invite you to receive Jesus. You know, some of you can relate with the stories of Kathy. Maybe like Kathy, you're someone who have been very active in church before, but you left for some personal reason, and now you're at this place where you're thinking about coming back to God, but you have many questions on your mind, like, if I come back, will I be serious this time? Can I come back and really make a commitment that I will never leave again? If I come back to church, can I fit into that kind of lifestyle again? Will people accept me back? And maybe you have all these questions, and I want to let you know that God is there where you are. He meets you there in that place, and slowly but surely He'll help you unpack these things. Maybe like Valerie, you're at a place where you put your hopes in God about something, and you felt let down or disappointed. And you're not sure, really, is God really out there? If God really is real and He loves me, why am I in this place right now? Or maybe like Chihan, that you're just tired of slogging it out, trying to outdo all your peers and trying to get to the top of the bell curve and eventually the corporate ladder, and you're wondering to yourself, is there meaning in life? And I want to let you know, my friend, God loves you. He has a plan for your life, a plan far better and far greater than anything that you can fashion for yourself. And some of you, if I can be honest, as you're watching this, you're already exposed, you're already familiar to Christianity, and you may even be convinced about the existence of God. But you're waiting. And I'm wondering, my friend, if you even know what you're waiting for. Are you waiting for a sign, a supernatural encounter, or even a crisis to happen in your life that you can call on God and God can prove Himself real for you? What are you waiting for? And if you don't even know what you are waiting for, even though you're already believe, you're already kind of convinced, I want to invite you right now to stop your waiting and take the next step. And the next step is simply to open up your heart and allow Jesus to lead your life. And if that doesn't work out for you well, you can pull the plug on it at any time and move on. You have nothing to lose, my friend, but you have everything to gain by meeting the King of Heaven and having Him in your life and leading your life. So right now, I'm going to extend an invitation to you to receive Jesus into your life. And I'm going to do this by leading you to pray this prayer. And this prayer is specially designed for those who are either saying yes to Jesus for the very first time, or those who have left the Christian faith but are coming back. And this prayer is just very simple, and the words simply talk about how we are acknowledging ourselves as sinners, accepting and receiving the forgiveness of sins from God, and then allowing Him to lead our lives. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray this prayer, and I'd like you to say the words with your mouth and mean it as much as you can in your heart. And you can do this in a posture, whatever is meaningful to you. You can close your eyes, you can clasp your hands, you can bow your head, you can open up your hands like this, whatever is meaningful to you. And the most important thing is that you say the words out loud with your mouth and mean it as sincerely as you can in your heart. Are you ready to pray? Pray with me. Say, Dear Jesus. One more time. Say, Dear Jesus. I confess that I'm a sinner, and I want to thank you for dying on the cross for my sins. Right now, I invite you to come into my life. Be my Lord. Be my Savior. Help me to become the kind of person I was created to be. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Right now, wherever you are, whether you said that prayer or not, I'd love to just pray a prayer of blessing over you. So wherever you are right now, you don't have to do anything or say anything. Just close your eyes and receive this prayer of blessing. Dear Jesus, I pray for my friend who is watching this right now, that you know whatever is going on in their life and you are in control of their life, and even whatever good things or bad things, Lord, you have a plan and a purpose for it. So God, I pray right now, wherever they're watching this from, whether they're watching this from their room or on the go or with a small group of friends, I pray, oh God, that they will experience your presence, your love, your goodness with them right now. I pray that whatever questions or fears or doubts that they might have today, I pray that in your time and in your way, you will answer their questions, you will ease their fears, and you will clear their doubts in the way that only you can. And God, I pray that you will bring them into not a religious action, but a personal relationship with you. Thank you, God. All this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Friends, we've come to the end of today's Cookie Cutter Life program, but don't forget there are some activities and discussions that are happening in our small groups right after this. So we'd love to get you connected. If you didn't manage to get connected at the start of the program today, well, here's how you can get connected. You can either type, I'm new, or connect me in the chat box right now, and our online host will get to you. Or you can click on the button and it will lead you to a link, and we'd love to get in touch with you and get you linked up to a small group that is most relevant to your age, your school, your campus, and the faculty that you're studying in, all right? So let's do that right now. And once again, thank you so much for joining us today.